Hello, hello. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I hope you can hear me. Well, how's everybody doing? I am about to record a podcast, which I have to push these back quite late right now because I usually aim to record these earlier in the day, just not to, keep pushing it way back. Otherwise, something like last time happens where I have to record an episode twice and I nearly don't manage it in the day. Not that I'm planning to do that again, but but I have to push them back because they are ripping up the road right now because we moved into this. They're just building everything. They're just building the road. I mean, there was kind of a road there, but it wasn't really I think this used to be like an industrial area before. And so they completely ripped it out, and they've been going quite long today. And then I just had to prepare stuff, and I mean, I had to go out for a while. I couldn't even concentrate. Just looking at my background. And by the way, don't worry, I'm not building a bomb. That's my motorcycle battery that I'm charging. I have some issues with the electrics with my motorbike, and I have to keep topping up the battery right now. So don't worry. I'm not building anything, doing anything scary. It's all completely above board. What are we doing? I can give you screen sharing again. I've got, as you can see, what's that there? So I've got everything set up right now. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to run a quick test to see if this all works, because last time it didn't. And then I recorded the whole episode. And then I had to do it again, which was nice. So let's not do that. Let's just play something.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a podcaster. That's all I can say. Very, very proud of.
With your own network to distribute yourself without having to go through Podbean or any of these operations going, we don't think your podcast is suitable anymore.
Let's play some wisdom there. Okay, let's see if that's recording well. And I've got little flies. That is annoying as hell. They're in the fruit. The bloody fruit.
Podcaster, that's all I can say. Very, very proud of.
With your own network to distribute yourself without having to go through Podbean or any of these operations going, we don't think your podcast is suitable anymore.
Let's play some wisdom there. Okay, let's see if that's recording well. Oh, that sounds good. That sounds like we can work with that. Well, in that case, I think I'm pretty much ready to do this. So I've got quite a long show ahead of me here. I've got some stuff on the new proposition for a new California privacy law that's been it's going to be voted on next month, and got some stuff about that. Got some stuff about this basically do not track 2. And then I have something I just want to read out, some very intelligent stuff I found. And then I've got actually plenty of feedback. But if you have any feedback on the fly, I'm going to try to start integrating here the Twitch chat. So if you say anything in the chat room, I'll keep my eye on it. I will definitely not, respond to everything. I might also just group it together. But I'll give my best to integrate your live feedback into the show. So keep it coming if you want to. Anyway, so let's shall we do this? Let's do this. What do we got? Wait. So I was drinking. Okay, you can see the mess here. I've been playing Elite today, so you can tell by the hotels. I've been drinking tea. Let's finish that up. We have to transition to something a bit stronger here. this show. Might get a bit ranty and a bit, inspirational. let's put it that way. But let's do this. I'll open the bottle beforehand. It's just easier. I'm gonna be very, very civilized. I'm gonna drink not from the bottle today, but from my my tankard. Actually, what is this? Tin? Is it tin? Yeah, it's from Sheffield. Does it actually say at the bottom? Edwin Blyde. I love this tankard. Okay, got some nice deals. Let's get this show on the road. Okay, what do you want to do? We want to do this, and then we want to start recording. I'm guessing we want to start recording. Yes, that looks good. And then we want to kick off the show. So let's do this live. Fuck it, let's do it live. You're listening to The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide, your privacy podcast. This is episode 42 for Wednesday, the 11th of October, 2020. Episode 42, the answer. No, California's new privacy law. Hello, everybody. My name's Fab, as usual, coming to you from the heart of the Rhineland, from Düsseldorf in Germany. My full name would be Fabian Alexander Scherschel, but let's just go with Fab. I like giving people the real name. I like to put my name with the things that I'm saying on the show. It's just the way I like to do things. Nice of you to be part of this once again, and come around and listen to some stuff on privacy and me being annoying and preaching on things which might happen today. I've just filled up my tankard with some nice Alt beer. Now that I'm in the region again, this is Diebels Alt, which is right around Issum am Niederrhein, right around the corner from where I was born. So let's do this. Let's get this show on the road. I'm just saying that, this is my rant warning that I like to give. There might be people listening to the show who are new to me doing podcasts and to the show, and don't be scared when I start ranting. It's part of the appeal. People tell me it's part of the appeal. People really like it, so just stick with it. I'm guessing. By the way, if the room still sounds a bit echoey, I'm sorry. I've just been working. We moved in. I got everything set up to a level where it was kind of acceptable, and then I just started working, and I haven't done anything yet, so there's not enough decoration on the walls, and I'll fix it. I'll promise. At some point it might get better. But with that, what are we going to do today? What are we going to talk about? I want to talk about a new. Recently talked about the Californian Privacy Law and how that's kind of important for the U.S. And there's a new one, Proposition 24, which is going to be voted on in November, which is interesting. I'm going to talk about that. I want to talk about which is a technical privacy solution for the internet, which is basically do not track 2. It's called the Global Privacy Control. So I want to talk about that. And then I found some stuff. I found a court opinion from the US, which I read and which I thought was very intelligent. So that was on the coronavirus related lockdown. So I'm gonna, before getting into the feedback at the end of the show. I'm just going to have a right turn there and talk a little bit about coronavirus, just because there's stuff in this court decision that I found very eloquent. And basically, the judge who wrote it was explaining things that I always struggle with on the show to explain to people, and he did very well. So I want to talk about that a little bit. And then after that, as usual, we have some feedback from producers who are chiming in with what's going on in their neck of the woods and critique the show, which is always very much appreciated. So speaking of critiquing the show, please, if you listen to this, go to privatecitizen.press. There's always show notes there, which I'm doing the show from. I'm doing these things live now, so you can, if you want to, you can watch me do it on Twitch, on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/Foxtrot Alpha Bravo. When I do the show, and then you can see basically that I'm what I'm doing, like that I have the show notes pretty much written, and I go by that. So they're basically my notes that I they're the show notes, one could say, but they're also there for you. So if you listen to it later and you wanna read up on stuff, and you listen to this in the car, and what was he talking about again? Go to privatecitizen.press. You can check it all out. There's links there, and there's also information. If you go to the footer, there's a contact link, and this links to my personal blog where there's ways listed there to contact me, and please do that. If you have any issue with anything I say on the show, if you have another opinion, if you want to add to it, if you have something interesting to say, I appreciate it very much. I think the show gains from that immensely, and the more feedback I get, the better. Because I'm trying to get you to do your own research, think for yourself. So I feel what I'm doing here is my viewpoint, and I only see that as the start of the experiment, so to say, of the project. So if you then take that up and you read the stuff that I'm giving you, and you have something to add, I'm very interested to hear that. So please do. And before we go into the first topic, I want to say special thanks to Georges Walther for becoming the first producer that is supporting the show at the new showrunner level. I talked about that in the last episode. This is the level that if you stick with it for 3 months, you get a shirt, and that I've designed for this occasion. And as you might have noticed, I changed the tagline of the podcast, because I came up with the tagline for the shirt, and I really like it. So, so thanks to George Walter. I hope I'm saying your name wrong. Right. I hope I'm saying it right. If I do say it wrong, be as this goes for everybody, any producer, I'm giving my best. But if I'm making horrible mistakes, please tell me, and I'll correct it. So thanks for supporting the show. This is obviously very important to me. And I do appreciate it quite a lot. For some reason I can't do a marker. Hello, yeah, okay, here we go. And with that, I think we should get right into the meat of the matter. I say that after like 7 minutes. I just realized. But let's talk about Proposition 24. So kind of by accident or something, I recently talked about the California Consumer Privacy Act and how important that is for the US, because, it's a California law. It only applies to the state of California, but because for reasons that we just have to accept, that have to do with the U.S. System of the federalism and everything, and how laws are done and what the federal government can do and can't do. It seems like there will not be a federal privacy law in the U.S. They're trying to do it, get it passed, but it's running into lots of issues. So the Californian law being passed is very important. because it kind of, companies, I mean, they have to do business in California, so they might as well adhere to the Californian law, and then it basically becomes a de facto standard for all of the US. And also, that's where all the tech companies are. And we, with privacy, often we're here on the show, we're talking about the tech companies. So it's hugely important, hugely influential for all of the US. And we learned actually as part of that, or I learned that it's quite interesting that this law is actually passed it's very much something that the voters in California wanted, because I was wondering, like, how come the tech company lobbies aren't, the lobby and the lobbyists aren't stopping this? Because they obviously all are in California, and apparently they've tried. It's just the voters, they keep being uppity, which I like, and they do keep being uppity because they want to pass there's the option of passing a second law now, which is called the California Privacy Rights and Enforcement Act. This is CPRA. So there's enforcement in there this time, and it's also known as Proposition 24. And I might get this wrong, so if you're in the US and I get this wrong, please correct me on this. But the way it works, as I understand it, is that when they have a big election, like the presidential election this November, they have, like, in the different states or wherever you are, you have different things that are also on the ballot. In Germany, they quite often do that, not with the big elections, but like with the smaller ones. You'd have like your local council election and then the federal state level election. They'd be on the same day. So they can do that. So they'll do all the council elections in the federal state on the same day, and then just bundle that up with the big federal state election. And it seems like this is the same in the US, and they also vote on different stuff when there's a big election on. But there's something different that we don't really do here. So we don't, in Germany, traditionally, we don't do this. The voters decide on a very specific certain thing. The US does that apparently, and especially California. I've heard about this California often. It's these propositions, and this time, this. So this California Consumer Privacy Act is part of this. So the California voters in the November election get to decide. Actually, when is the election? I keep talking about this, and I'm like, I don't know. Is it the 16th? 2020. Let me just Google that. Presidential election. So when are the Russians gonna hack? Gonna do the big hack? When is it? It's the 3rd of November. Wow, that's coming up very soon, man. And I just pulled up the Wikipedia page. There's pictures of Donald Trump and Joe Biden. They have exactly the same smile. Actually, on those two pictures, they look scarily, like they have the same smile, they have the same eyes, they have the same facial contortion going on. It's like, for both of them, it looks like a very, very forced smile. I mean, obviously, Biden pulls it off better because the guy's just a charmer. Like, even with borderline dementia or whatever's going on, he's just a charmer. But that is scarily similar. Anyway, so on the 3rd of November, so the California voters on that day also have the chance to decide about this. And let's just, so I was just talking about that other law, and then I saw this story on I think Vox.com, and so let's see what this law is about. And they're saying about this: while most of America is focused on the presidential vote, Californians have another important decision to make at the polls this November. They're being asked to approve what will likely become the Internet Privacy Law for the United States. Proposition 24, also known as the California Privacy Rights and Enforcement Act of 2020, CPRA, is supposed to expand a landmark California privacy law that passed 2 years ago. There's a good chance Californians will approve this one too. I hope that's right. I don't know. I'm not trusting in Vox's ability to to predict this. I mean, I guess they are in California, so they should know. But I'm also pretty sure that most of their guys thought Hillary was going to win last time. So we don't know. Anyway, let's hope they are right on this one. It's framed as legislation that will better protect their privacy, in particular sensitive data such as social security numbers, race, religion, and health information. And while the proposed law technically governs the use and sale of data for Californians, California has an enormous impact in the tech industry, which means CPRA will become the de facto law for all of the US. Which, I guess it's good that you guys over there getting a privacy law by ways of this, but it would kind of piss me off if I was like in Tennessee, and I know I have listeners in Tennessee, or in Texas, listeners in Texas, and those Californians would be deciding like the de facto law. That would piss me off, I think. Although in this case, I don't know. I'm gonna, at the end of this, I'm gonna debate a little bit what I think about legislation in this regard in general. But I guess in this case, it wouldn't piss me off. Among other impacts of the proposed law, it makes a point of protecting young people by mandating triple fines for infringements against consumers under age 16. It will, why under 16? Wouldn't it be under 18? That's weird. It will allow consumers to restrict the use of geolocation data by third parties, effectively ending practices like sending targeted ads to people who've visited a rehab center or cancer clinic. And it will fund the creation of an agency to protect consumer privacy. Actually, talking about geolocation data, no, I think Vox is completely wrong here. The interesting thing about this would be we've talked about on the show before, this geofencing thing, where basically, because the police needs a warrant to, they could just track your cell phone, right? They could just triangulate your cell phone. But because that is actually quite well regulated in the US, and they do need a warrant, and that's really pesky, they now tend to just buy data from apps, geolocation data from apps, which gives them pretty much this. I mean, it's probably not as fine-grained, but it's it's fine-grained enough for anything they do, and it does away with this pesky need for a warrant. And also, obviously, all the companies use it to do stuff, but I think that's an important thing that they're actually not mentioning here. They're also talking about how news publishers think this is bad, and Vox is actually, this Vox writer is like editorializing a lot in this story. I actually left that out. I don't agree with him, and I don't agree with the way he's writing about that. But anyway, so they're talking about news publishers, and of course this is also bad for the ad people. Or, as we know them, Google and Facebook, which, in case you hadn't noticed, are the biggest ad companies in the world now. Google, more people know that Google makes money with advertising, but, Facebook has become massive. If you talk to people who have small businesses, just talk to them about how big of a deal Facebook ads is for them. It's huge. So it's taken over a lot of the advertisings that would traditionally have run in the radio or TV or in your local newspaper or whatever. Google, obviously we know that that's important in this regard, but Facebook, very, very important as well. So they go on in this story. From targeted advertising to personalization, data does a lot of work online. Unfortunately, two companies dominate data collection and therefore digital advertising. One big question about any privacy laws is whether they actually create more advantages for Google and Facebook instead of leveling the playing field for smaller competitors. We've seen this happen before in Europe, which began enforcing a new privacy law in May 2018. Big tech companies have been able to effectively neuter the law by implementing half measures and exploiting loopholes while enforcement lags. And I was reading this, I was like, what are they going on about? They're obviously talking about the GDPR. It's like, why is the GDPR, what are those loopholes? Why is it not effective against big companies. I had so far the understanding that it is actually effective, but that they're just that's ongoing. That if you're like a regulator and you're using the GDPR, to get a fine of millions or even billions out of Facebook, that's obviously a slow process. That proving that will require a lot of work. And so I was under the impression that a lot of actually local privacy regulators actually working on this, which I think is still right. But I was curious about those loopholes. I was like, what are those loopholes they're talking about? I'm not up on this topic enough. So I did a little bit of research, and this is just a very recent example that I found that's very interesting to us, because we also talked about Max Schrems and Noib, his Noyb, and him, suing Facebook and thus killing Privacy Shield, and later also what was the Safe Harbor. At first he killed Safe Harbor and then killing Privacy Shield. We talked about that on the show. So I found a story here on where was this Decision Marketing about one of these loopholes, which is I think from this month. The issue is somewhat complex, but it was worth a recap. It dates back more than 7 years when Austrian lawyer and privacy activist Max Schrems first complained to the Irish Data Protection Commission. So this is where Facebook, they're in Ireland, so they're the regulator that is whose jurisdiction Facebook falls under. Complained to the Irish Data Protection Commission that the existing data transfer agreement between the EU and US, Safe Harbor, did not provide adequate protection from surveillance by American authorities. Following a long legal battle in 2015, the European Court of Justice ruled that Safe Harbor was invalid, but within a year, Brussels and Washington had come up with another pact, Privacy Shield. Schrems argued that this new deal was still not strong enough, and in July this year, the ECJ agreed. I've covered this on this show. Outlawing Privacy Shield 2, which had been used by nearly 5,400 businesses, including Facebook, Amazon, Google, Experian, Axiom, LinkedIn, and Microsoft. However, in its ruling on Privacy Shield, the ECJ also put the boot into alternative transfer mechanisms, including so-called standard contract clauses, SCCs, and binding corporate rules, ordering that these should face greater scrutiny from both data controllers and regulators. Actually, I hadn't understood it that way. As I reported on that, I'd read experts saying that SCCs were still going to be business as usual. So maybe this interpretation has changed. I don't know. Anyway, let's just go with what they're saying now. At the time, Mishcon Dereya partner Adam Rose said, quote, "There must now be serious questions as to whether any transfers to the US can be valid. As a result of this, the regime used by some of the world's biggest international groups must now also be open to challenge. Data protection authorities must intervene to stop transfers which are made to countries without an adequate level of protection." Now, according to a report in the Wall Street Journal, the Irish DPC has issued a preliminary order to Facebook to stop using SCCs to transfer data to the US, which I hadn't heard about, which is interesting. But privacy group Noyb, which is fronted by Schrems, claims Facebook is not using either SCCs or corporate binding rules, and now we come to the loophole, but a fourth legal basis for data transfers, the alleged, quote, necessity to outsource processing to the US under contract with its users, Article 49, Section 1B of the GDPR. This means that any, quote, preliminary order by the Irish DPC on the SCCs alone will in fact not prevent Facebook from arguing that its transfers are still legal. NOYB claims that in practice, Article 49, Section 1b of the GDPR may be an appropriate legal basis for very limited data transfers, for instance, when the EU user is sending a message to an American user, but cannot be used to outsource all data processing to the US. Schrems said, we obviously welcome the notion that the Irish DPC is finally moving towards doing its job after 7 years of procedures and 5 court decisions, all of which upheld our position. However, this move by the DPC may lead to another half-hearted decision. The leak about a secret preliminary order against Facebook shows that the Irish DPC was, I guess, there was a leak about what the court was going to do, or what the DPC was going to do. The leak about a secret preliminary order against Facebook shows that the Irish DPC was trying to run a secret procedure without the complaint. While such an order should have been issued in 2013, we're very concerned that the DPC is again only embarking on a limited investigation that will not fully determine all aspects of the case. So if I understand this correctly, then people thought that Facebook was using these SCCs, but they're actually not. Now, the Irish watchdog, which triggered by Schrems' lawsuit and everything, is now doing an order where they say, well, Facebook can't use SCCs. I guess Schrems is alleging, knowing that Facebook, which Schrems is saying, they're actually not using the SCCs. So if they order them to stop using SCCs, then actually not using SCCs, then that whole decision would be, just smoke. I guess Schrems is alleging this is a smoke screen, and Facebook is using this other method, which is the loophole. Quote, we will therefore take the appropriate legal action in Ireland to ensure, so he's going to sue again, no surprise, to ensure that the rights of users are fully upheld, no matter which legal basis Facebook claims. After 7 years, all cards have to be put on the table. I would agree with him on that. So that's very interesting. I hadn't know about all of this, so I'm gonna keep up on this. I'm gonna look into this in detail and probably also talk about it in future episodes, because this is going on and it's obviously a big thing. Like, this is basically the battleground in Europe right now, because Facebook is the biggest bad actor, one could say, when it comes to privacy, and Schrems is obviously going after them to establish ground rules under the GDPR, just precedents, which sounds good. I support him in doing that. So that's interesting. Anyway, let's go back to the Vox piece on the CPRA. So they were saying, these are the kind of loopholes that companies are using under the GDPR. And I guess, this makes sense. Obviously, the Californian legislators are looking at that. They're looking at what's happening in Europe with the GDPR, which was obviously a inspiration to draft this first Californian privacy law. And they're like, well, look, they're using these loopholes, and we should shut the loopholes down. So Vox, in this Vox story, they say, the good news for consumers and news publishers alike is that CPRA seeks to close any loopholes in the previous privacy law the state passed 2 years ago. For starters, the law is supposed to more clearly limit data collection and use for third parties, companies you don't expect to get access to your data when you visit a news site, while allowing publishers to continue to use data they generate on their own sites. By the way, Vox keeps talking about all of this, and I feel like they have. I mean, we can look this up, right? I feel like they also have shit on their website. I mean, pretty sure they're tracking me. Let's go to vox.com, which is loading quite slowly. They want me to support their journalism. Chip in. So I have this handy Vivaldi browser which shows me all the trackers. So they have 13 trackers: Google Analytics, Accelerator.com, NewRelic.com, Amazon-adsystem.com, Google tagmanager.com, Google tagservices.com, Moa M-O-A-T ads.com, Outbrain. Oh God, Outbrain's horrible. I was using that at Heise when I was there. My God, that thing's shit. And Parsley.com. And of course, I've blocked 6 ads from these people. I mean, when they say limit data collection use for third parties, companies you don't expect to get access to your data when you visit a news site. That was all of that I just read out. I mean, we expect that, as listeners to this podcast, you probably do as well, but in air quotes, normal people, people just using the internet, not thinking about this stuff all the time. They don't expect this. So for starters, the law is supposed to more clearly limit data collection and use for third parties, companies you don't expect to get access to your data when you visit a news site, while allowing publishers to continue to use data they generate on their own sites. I mean, that's okay. That's what I use, generate data on your. So if you go to privatecitizen.press, hosted on Netlify, they have these GDPR compliant statistics. So what it basically does is they have server stats, right? They track your IP address and they keep that around for 30 days. So I have like a 30-day stats stuff from Netlify where I can see how many people and where the IPs are from, that kind of stuff. I think that's okay. That's good. But all those trackers will go away. And this Vox guy saying this is good for news publishers, and Vox is obviously on the. I mean, I think they're seeing the writing on the wall. They're trying to get you to chip in. They're doing the same thing I'm doing, right? Except I don't have ads right now. I'm a better hat, but I guess it's the Guardian model for print journalism or print online journalism where you're like, okay. Although I think they also have ads, they also have ads. So they're just, they're trying to transition to this, which I agree with this writer. I think that's generally a good thing. I think you shouldn't need legislation to push you there, but apparently we do need legislation to push people there. Anyway, continuing in the story, that unbridled data surveillance by some big tech companies outside of their own user-facing services, that is Google and Facebook's ability to track you even when you're not on their properties, has undermined consumer trust in the entire digital economy. Fair point. Giving consumers the ability to control their own data should help restore some of that trust. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, the CPRA closes loopholes that could be exploited by big tech platforms. One aspect of this is what we're calling the switch language, which clearly aligns the obligations of third parties to serve the interests of consumers. It notes that when a consumer exercises their opt-out rights and a publisher passes that choice along to all companies with which it works, third parties, those companies must stop reusing that consumer's data for any other purpose. This essentially forces those companies to revert to the role of a service provider. The switch language also prevents any wriggle room by not allowing contracts to override this requirement. That's actually good. As publishers experienced in Europe, platforms like Google and Facebook often use their unbalanced negotiation leverage to force publishers to sign over these data rights. So this selection is hugely important for individual publishers that do not have the leverage to force Google and Facebook to stop mining data off their properties. Finally, CPRA clarifies that publishers are not responsible for third parties that violate the previous section as long as they do not have actual knowledge of the violation. Now, at this point, I don't... obviously, I mean, I should have probably said this at the beginning, but, I'm not a lawyer, which should be obvious. I mean, if I was a lawyer, I was like, would I be doing these podcasts? I mean, I'd be making money, for God's sake. Although I don't think I could ever be a lawyer. It's just not for me. I like speaking my mind too much. I'd be in the courtroom and the judge would be saying that. I'm like, Your Honor, with all due respect, that's bullshit. No, that would probably not be good. But you know, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but that seems weird. Like that seems to be hard to. So to say, you know, you're not responsible if you don't know about it. So that would mean that, you know, if there was a lawsuit, the other party would have to prove that they knew about it, and that's always hard to do. I guess it's easier these days when you have emails and, you know, but I mean, they could delete the emails. I guess if you can, they can do that with discovery, you know, and then you can have a discovery process and stuff. But that just feels weird. I don't. So I think, if I understand it correctly, this could be wrong. If you know it's wrong, please tell me. As usual, that applies, right? But I think so. From what I know, on the GDPR, it works like this. So let's take an example that actually dealt with in the past. So you have a hospital, right? And they do a medical study. And so, you know, the people at the hospital doing the medical study, obviously it's a medical study. So even before the GDPR, you have all these forms, right? You have, if you participate in the study, you have to fill out all these waivers and all these things. And but now these days, one of these waivers is a GDPR information form, right? It will tell you that the hospital will gather health data from you, that it needs as part of this study. And sorry, I was just turning my phone off, which I forgot to do, which is not good when you're doing a podcast. You know, the one of these forms will basically be, you know, we're collecting this data, and we're keeping this data for this long. And often you have to do that because often you have to keep that data longer than the normal time would be under GDPR. I think standard with medical studies is often like 10 years. Anyway, so you do all of that. You inform them, the people taking part in the study, about their rights under GDPR, whatever. And then, you know, you do the medical study. And then sometimes, you know, you would, you know, as part of the study, there'd be analysis you need to do, right? And so if it's maybe a simple PCR or something, you do that in the lab in your hospital. But there might be like lots of blood tests or something that you don't want the scientists to do. So you'd outsource that to a lab, right? And that would be a typical third-party thing. Now, as far as I understand it, under GDPR, you know, obviously I'm not a lawyer, but let's say you do that. Let's say you handle the data well, you know, you do everything right. You're the hospital, you do everything right. And then you hand that data to the lab. You hand some health data to the lab, and they process that and use it and whatever. And they fuck up, and they, you know, their server gets hacked or whatever, and the data ends out on the internet. As far as I can understand, you as the first party, that, you know, or the second party, I guess the first party would be the person affected, took part in the study, that, you know, handed that data over to you as their, you know, the party they have the contract with, the stuff they signed. You'd be responsible, and they would sue you, and you would have to defend yourself in court. I think the way it works is you would have to pay a fine, but then it wasn't your fault. You know, you have a contract with that lab, and you outsourced that data under that contract. And I think you could then sue them. So I think you could probably get the money back from that lab, but I feel like, the way I understand it, under GDPR, you are still responsible. And I think that's a good mechanism, because, you know, I think it helps. I mean, this is a typical corporation excuse. Like, oh yeah, we outsourced that. It's not, you know, it's their fault. It's like no, you chose that service partner. Nobody forced you to outsource that, right? I mean, in a case like with the study, for example, you have to do that, right? You can't do all the time. I mean, it's just a necessity, but still, you're picking that service provider. And I think you should have a requirement, at least, you know, you should be under duress from getting sued from somebody if something goes wrong. To vet those people, to do your due diligence, to make sure that service provider is processing that data and storing that data in a responsible way. Otherwise, you get like this, right? I think this thing they're stipulating here kind of leads to we didn't know. And we're not going to even ask, right? If we ask, then there's an email, there's a paper trail, and they can say we know. It's like this. There's like this really. So when I was doing a lot of Linux stuff, obviously, Linux podcasts I did back in the day. I always loved the legal stuff, even though I'm not a lawyer. I keep saying that. I need like a jingle. I'm not a lawyer. I always found that interesting. Like, I always found legal stuff interesting. There's this like patent thing. There's the thing in patents where actually, so in the US, if you violate a patent and you knew, as far as I understand it, and you can get like double or triple damages, like if they can prove that you knew. So there's this thing where when you want to patent something or you want to invent something, you don't even check, right? If you do a patent search and you check, then they can later prove that you did that and that you knew. Or they can say, well, you did a patent check. There's no way you could have not found this. We know you asked the patent office, this kind of stuff, which this is just hilarious to me. But aside from that minor detail, I generally think this is good. This sounds like a good law. I think it makes sense. It makes sense, learning from the mistakes of the first one. And the big problem with the first law seems to have been that there wasn't enough enforcement, which there's now enforcement in the name of the second one, because they really want to, you kind of need that. And I just think it's good. I hope that it gets passed. I hope it works. I hope this is like the way for the US to get proper privacy laws, because first of all, I have many listeners in the US. I have friends in the US, and I think you guys deserve some better legislation there. But I also think it's good for the rest of the world, because that's where all the tech companies are. And it's like currently it's like this. If you look at it like from a big picture thing, you get these discussions where the US is like the, Silicon Valley. It's like where all the invention happens, the innovation happens here. And then Europe, their Gdpr, they're the privacy nut jobs. That's why they don't have any innovation there. And they don't have any innovation, so they can afford to screw with the stuff we invent. And I don't think that is good. I think this cross-Atlantic fight is bad. And I feel like if there are actually some privacy laws at the source and they actually get enforced, then maybe these companies, I'm not so naive that I'm saying maybe they will understand that privacy. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but that privacy is important. That's not going to happen. That's not how it works. But if they get slapped on the wrist, where they live, immediately, then that will just have good repercussions for everybody. Just as I think that the GDPR had good repercussions for people in the US, because I think a lot of these laws are influenced by that, and also a lot of companies that had to, comply. Maybe not Facebook and Google, but that had to comply with the GDPR. Where I might as well comply with this shit at home. So I generally see this as a good thing. I'll keep an eye on it, and let's see where it goes. So, and if you have, if you're in California, if you listen to this and you have any special insight, please let me know. Private Citizen or Press, all the info on there. Oh, sorry. Whacking the mic. That I think that would be good. I think some local some local reports from local producers would be excellent at this point. So with that brings us to another topic I wanted to talk about, which kind of slides into this perfectly, because with the new law, there's potentially there's new technology, or it's like an old technology, but let's call it new technology, that's being proposed here, that might go really well with this. And this is I'm calling it Do Not Track 2. So you might remember Do Not Track. Do Not Track is a technology where basically you're using the internet, and your client, whatever, so your web browser that you're using the internet with, will set a header. This is just like I think it's just a bit. Anyway, it's just it's a flag that your browser sets every time it pulls a website, that will tell the website, I do not want to be tracked. So when this came in and people were really into this, I think I was still doing Linux Outlaws back in the day. But I'm sure I've talked about it on some other podcast. Might have been, I don't know, Geek News Radio. I'm sure I've talked about this before, but I've never understood this because there was no enforcement mechanism. This didn't really make sense. You were going to a news website with like 16 trackers on it, like Vox.com, right? And you were telling them, please don't track me. And there was no mechanism for you to check, for anybody to check. There was no enforcement. There were no laws against, this user is saying don't track me, and you're still tracking him, or her. So that was always the problem. Let's put it that way. Anyway, they are aiming to fix this now with the second version. So I'm going to read a little bit from the Register. They written a story about this recently. A coalition of technology companies, publishers, academics, and advocacy groups this week proposed a web specification to allow internet users to declare whether they agree to have their personal data shared or sold. It's not called Do Not Track, DNT, a web specification that took shape in 2011. So that must have been Linux Outlaws. I talked about that. After percolating for several years, and allows internet users to declare whether they agree to third-party web tracking. Instead, it's called Global Privacy Control, GPC. And its backers believe this time will be different. Maybe they missed the word, or I didn't copy it. Anyway, its backers believe that this time it will be different. Oh, by the way, if you hear that, if you just heard a like blang, this is like cars. They put a metal plate over a hole in the road, and it's really loud when cars drive over that. And there's lots of cars going by here. I don't know. There's nothing. It's weird. There's nothing outside my window. There's not even a road currently. People used to park here when this was still like a building site, right? But now they can't park here because everything looks like Dresden after the war currently, but there's still lots of cars going by. I don't understand it. Anyway, but that has nothing to do with the global privacy control. The project was spearheaded by Ashkan Soltani, a privacy researcher who helped develop Do Not Track and who served at America's Federal Trade Commission, and Sebastian Simek, a computer scientist at Wesleyan University. GPC has attracted the support of the usual privacy-aligned suspects: Abeen, DuckDuckGo, Brave Software, Disconnect, Mozilla, and the Electronic Frontier Foundation, among others, as well as various publishers like the Financial Times, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, which again is funny because they keep tracking people. But apparently they're against tracking. And I guess if you force them to stop tracking, then they'll go to a subscription model. But like, if they think tracking is wrong, why then they, I've never understood this. So I worked at a publishing company previously, and there were the same discussions. It's like, So we're launching a premium product, and where people, it's a free news. Up to that point, it was a free news site mostly, and then you're launching a premium product, and you're like, okay, so if you want to get people to pay a certain amount of money a month, we will ask them what they want, and they're like, all of them are like, we don't want ads and we don't want to be tracked. And then these people are like, well, we can't do that. If we do that, we lose all our money, and then we go bankrupt. And we don't know if enough people will sign up, so we can't do that. And you're like, okay. Right. I'm not there to work out the business model, right? I'm just an editor. I'm just like, I don't care. Do whatever you want. I just want to write news stories, which was hard to do. But sure. That's an argument you can have. That might be a valid argument. But when they basically say tracking is bad and they do that, then I don't like. If you are of that opinion, then you're like, well, it's bad, right? It's like saying, it's like you're selling weapons, right? You're a weapons manufacturer, and you're like, weapons are used in wars. They kill people. They are bad. We should stop doing weapons. That would be the moral thing to do. But we can't. We make all our money from weapons. Like, okay. Like, why have that? Why even worry about what's morally right if that's your? I don't get that. Anyway, but the FT, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, they're part of this. So I guess they're gonna honor this. I don't know. DNT and GPC don't look very different. Each is expressed as a binary digit, so it is a bit, in an HTTP header or as an HTTP DOM property, where the value 1 represents the user's preference not to be tracked or not to have data shared or sold. As conveyed by a user agent, for example, a web browser, DNT involves setting a DNT header field. The GPC specification entails setting a sec-GPC header field. So that's the same thing. So you're kind of asking yourself, why should it work this time around? Last time was a colossal flop. So let's see what they say. So this Soltani guy was actually talking to the register via email, I'm guessing. Soltani believes GPC can succeed where DNT failed thanks to changes in the regulatory landscape. California's Attorney General Xavier Becerra has suggested as much. This is the guy who is behind the Californian Privacy Law, who's pushing them. While the Federal Trade Commission supported DNT when it took shape a decade ago, there was no enforcement mechanism and thus no reason for companies to respect DNT signaling. The spec went to Internet Standards Body W3C and proceeded to be put through a standards process dominated by industry lobbyists. As Soltani tells it, DNT got co-opted and stalled. We know how that works, right? This is how they put the copyright protection into web browsers as well. You just staff these standards bodies with. They're all staffed with industry people anyway. You just get together and that's how it works. As we say in Germany, eine Hand wäscht die andere. Quid pro quo. Ultimately, the FTC backed away from the project. So it just sort of flopped, he said. The 2003 California Online Privacy Protection Act, it's COPPA, was amended in 2013 to include a requirement that online services disclose how they respond to the DNT signal. We don't. However, the state law didn't require anyone to obey the DNT signal, and so they didn't. The California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, which took effect at the beginning of this year, and the General Data Protection Regulation, General Data Protection Regulation, isn't it General Data Privacy Regulation? Anyway, the GDPR, which took effect for EU citizens in 2018, have altered the privacy landscape. The CCPA established a right to opt out of having one's data shared or sold. That is section 999.315. Requests to opt. Wait, did I copy something wrong in the story? I just need to check this. That looks weird. Maybe I fucked something up. No, it's section 999.315 requests to opt out. 999. Okay. That format, that it was on this movie where Hitler was always like 999. I feel like I have to find this now. Oh God! If I search on YouTube for Hitler 999, it's gonna end in disaster. Was it 9? I was entering the number 999 now. That's not how it works. Oh yeah, here. This should be the right clip. 9999999. Exactly. 9999999. So section 9999999. Point. Was it 0.1? Something. Where was it? Oh God. Sorry, again. Which section is it? 9999999.315. Request to opt out. Anyway, the CCPA establishes a right to opt out of having one's data shared or sold and establishes user-enabled global privacy controls such as a browser plugin or privacy setting as a mechanism that's acceptable to do so. DNT is not an option because it deals with tracking, not the sale and sharing of personal data, which basically is the same thing, but I guess it's not if you're a lawyer. Becerra has said DNT doesn't clearly signal the intent to opt out of data sharing and selling. GPC has been set up to do just that. And Soltani suggests GPC has the potential to change privacy dynamics from an opt-out default to opt-in, something advertisers have long opposed, of course, because nobody would opt into tracking. That's because once a GPC declaration has been made, any company seeking to sell or share data will need to obtain user permission to flip the consent switch off. And companies doing business in California, even those outside the state, will be motivated to comply because of CCPA. The system was left extensible so it could be applicable to the GDPR, said Soltani. Presently GPC has been implemented in the Brave browser, the DuckDuckGo privacy browser, and DuckDuckGo extensions, and browser extensions like Abeen, Blur, Disconnect, Abeen, I think it's Abeen, Opt, Meowt, and the EFF's Privacy Badger. And project participants hope to see support expand to other browsers and to mobile operating systems. Well, hold your breath on Chrome for that one. Although there was news, which I actually had as a news thing to talk about in the show, but we already have so much stuff to talk about. But I guess I can quickly mention it that the US is actually thinking about, as part of, they want to go after Google for antitrust, and as part of that, there was rumors that they might want to force Google to sell off Chrome. So we'll see about that. But I mean, you can hear in my voice that I'm skeptical about this whole thing. I mean, it just sounds like it's just gonna be another cookie warning, right? So they will just do the things they do now with cookies, where they basically, the first time you go to the website, like this thing comes up. Even if let's say it would be that your default to opt out. So your default with this thing would be that you're opting out of tracking and data selling, whatever. And then the first time you go to a website, let's say news website, it would say, hey, you're defaulting to we need you to opt in to tracking, otherwise we can't make any money and you can't visit our site. Right? And then you can't read your news. So the thing you do is like you click OK. It's like with the browser with the cookie warning. It's like, yeah, go away. I want to read the news story. Somebody linked me to from Twitter. So this doesn't really make clear how that would evade that problem. And then these guys. So the problem I have with lots of these privacy advocates, when I started this show, I made a point out of, this is a podcast for normal people who also maybe want some privacy, but it's a realistic view on things. Right? I want privacy, but I still want to use apps. I still want to use my phone. And things are not black and white. It's not like 100% privacy. People aren't like that. They also want to use tools, and then there has to be a balance, and you have to look at these things realistically. And I feel a lot of the time, these traditional privacy advocates, they're not doing that. They're too fundamentalist. But they're like Linux fanboys. It's like, we can't have anything that's not free software. Just strip everything off your Android and just use F-Droid. And it's like, normal people can't work like that. Normal people can't recompile their own kernel every time they, reinstall their operating system. That's not how it works. And I guess my mission in life, especially in podcasting, has always been to be like realistic. Like, Linux Outlaws was a show about Linux. It was realistic. I mean, we looked into stuff like, Arch and stuff like that. And I think I did. Didn't I did Arch once. I tried, What's the one where you compile everything? I already forgot this. Holy shit, Gentoo, because I could never get that. I try to be realistic with this things. Same thing with privacy. I'm not 100%. Let's get completely off the grid, cut everything, throw my phone away, just use a burner dumb phone. I like my smartphone. I like my iPhone. I like using it. I try to get better. I try to be tracked less, but I'm not like one or the other. And I feel like these people are often too fundamentalist. And you can see this in the last quote I have from the story. So, quote, "When I talk to people at tech companies, it seems they understand that privacy is an important part of their business," said Zimek. "And even if they don't believe they should offer privacy from a moral or ethical standpoint, it's a valuable business proposition at this point." Dude, that's completely bullshit. No, it's not. You're talking yourself into that because you're like a privacy programmer dude writing like your web extension header for, to fix this privacy problem for all of us. But that's not, no, it's not. It's not a valuable business proposition. Why, if that was the case, why are Google and Facebook two of the richest tech companies there are? They don't give a fuck about privacy. It's not a business proposition for them. The business proposition for them is exactly the opposite. And for most other companies, companies default to collecting as much data about you as they can. Even with the GDPR, even with all the scary shit that went on, like in the press, and everybody's scared, and all the marketers scared before it came into effect, right? Even with that, nearly no companies, I barely know, like one or two companies, and there were small companies where they were like, maybe this data collection is not worth, maybe we should just per default collect as little data about our customers as possible. Nobody said that. And we're talking, I don't know, bakeries, right? If I was running a bakery chain, I'd be like, let's just concentrate on making ace bread and like selling bread and, maybe the logistics or whatever. But who gives the crap who our customers are? We don't need to collect data on it. We don't need a loyalty program. We don't need all this shit. Yeah, you can make a little bit more money, but, let's just get the customers to buy our bread by making really good bread. Like, nobody says that. No matter what business you're in, everybody's collecting as much information about their customers as they can. And the only way to limit that, and this is the thing I want to talk about maybe in the end now, is legislation actually a good thing? Do we need that? And generally, you probably know me by now. If you listened, this is the 42nd episode you're listening to for the show, I'm generally, I'm not anti-legislation, but I'm for keeping regulation, state regulate to a minimum. There's good reasons for regulations, right? There's just things you need to force people to do, or companies, otherwise they don't do that. So one thing in Germany, we have regulation. We have too much regulation about everything, like building and where you can build and where you can't build. But there's some good regulations, overvoltage protectors have to be everywhere now. Like if you build a place where I live here, if they build new building like this with lots of people living in it, like renting flats, you have to put overvoltage protection in, which is great. I don't, I was just on a I think earlier, a few months ago or something, I was like on a Twitter thread with people like, do you unplug your stuff during like all the electronics during thunderstorm? I'm like, what is this, the 80s? You have overvoltage protection. That's why I have overvoltage protection. That's what it's for, in the switchboard, right next to the door, right? Why wouldn't you have that? There's just like these little things. There may be, I don't know what they cost. They could be 60 euros a thing, and there's 3 in there. I mean, okay, yeah, it's a bit of money, but, and you only get to do something like that. Only get that with regulation, because your landlord, if they can save money, if they can save the whatever that thing costs, let it be 300 euros for all 3 of them. I don't know. If they can save that, they will save that. So for some stuff, you need legislation. I think it's generally good. If you're thinking about government, to keep it at a minimum, because the more you get, the more it stifles innovation, the more it stifles people's freedom. It'll just lead to corruption. The more regulation you have, the more corruption you have. I think that's pretty much self-evident. But you need some legislation. I feel like this is one of the things as well. If you look at the history of the internet, in air quotes, at the last, 30 years of it, it's pretty clear, and I've been there from pretty much early on. It's pretty clear that this stuff, you will not get rid of this stuff, you will not minimize the stuff if you don't regulate it. It's just data is kind of, it's been likened to the oil of the digital economy. I don't know if that's such a good comparison, but it's like gold lying on the street, right? If you have no downside, storage is so cheap, CPU time, working with that data, processing it, getting information out of it is so cheap that it's basically it's free money. And not for everybody. The funny thing is, everybody's collecting it about everybody. Everybody's doing. All the companies are doing it. Most companies don't even know how to use the data they have. There's all these. Oh yeah, big data, cloud. It's all these buzzwords. Let's put it in a blockchain. Let's have AI analyze. It's all of that is bullshit. Lots of that's just ripping these companies off. But it's like lots of these companies don't even know what to do with the data. But they got it because it's cheap. It's cheap to collect. It's cheap to keep somewhere. Why not? Everybody keeps saying it's great for business. So why wouldn't you do it? And I feel that's the point where you cannot go and think for yourself like that guy, hey, we need to convince companies. He's not even saying that we need to convince them, to think about the morals of things. I guess even that, what's his name, Zimek guy is smart enough to understand that morals and companies don't really go to, they keep it in PR, they keep saying that, but, companies are an immoral construct. That's just what they are. They have nothing to do with morals. Business has nothing to do. Morals is a personal thing, a thing a person has. And yes, you can be part of a company and have morals and impose those morals on the company. But the company itself, a collection of people, doesn't have morals. I come back, I have this. On This Outlaws, we had this thing, and on Geek News Radio, on many of my podcasts I did in the past. We had this thing, listeners called it Time to Hitler. How long would it be till Fat mentions the Nazis? We're now about an hour into the show, so I guess that is quite long for my stand. But let's mention the Nazis. That's how the Nazis happened, right? There were some evil people, but most of the people were just walking along. Yeah, if you have a group of people, if you're a government organization or a company, that construct doesn't have morals. People in it have morals, but it's really easy for them to say, oh, I'm just following orders, and just ignore their morals. And that's how all this shit happens. And that's why we have a constitution, right? Because the government itself doesn't have morals either. Individual politicians might. And, you might be lucky, and the chancellor or the president of the country or the prime minister might have morals, and they might act after the morals, but you can't be guaranteed that. And this is why you have laws that are hard to change, that kind of put guidelines around this kind of thing, which is a constitution. It's generally a construct that tries to keep the government moving in a direction where it'll be in the bounds of morals, right? And so this kind of feels the same thing. You have to keep corporations, you have to give them guidelines, otherwise they'll just run roughshod about it. I mean, you see it with Facebook. Actually, I've read a lot of. There seems to be this thing. Maybe it's a 2020 thing. Maybe it's we're all gonna die in the apocalypse. Let's confess our sins thing. I don't know. But there seem to be cropping up these interviews and stories about Silicon Valley engineers recently, where they're like, "Oh, we built all this surveillance infrastructure. Now we realize it's actually bad. When we were building it, we thought it was great, but now we realize it's actually bad." And I mean, you see that with Facebook. I mean, the company, there might be like a lot of people inside the company that think, hey, what we're actually doing here is a net loss for humanity. But the whole, the machinery makes money that way, right? It'll just keep moving in that direction unstoppably as long as it makes money that way. It's the same with Google. There's lots of people inside Google who are like, some of the stuff we do is really bad for humanity. It's really immoral. But it's how they make money. It's how that keeps as long as the money train moves, right? And sometimes the companies at some point, which I find that rubs me really wrong, when they make a ton of money with some really immoral shit. And then later on, they're like, oh yeah, we need to fix that. Oh, now that we've made all these billions, like Microsoft is a good example. Microsoft completely obliterated the PC operating system market. Completely. I mean, if you read into the stuff, Bill Gates and Bill Gates was more in the 80s, but Ballmer in the 90s, early 2000s, the anti-competitive shit they did to everybody, to open source people, to Linux. I mean, this is why Linux Outlaws was called Linux Outlaws, because at the time I felt like an outlaw using Linux. If you listen to what, for example, Microsoft was saying in their PR, right? And now they're like, oh, we're friendly with open source. It's all great. You're like, yeah. Now after you made billions and billions, after you destroyed all the competition and basically turned this is why we have shit operating systems. This is why Windows is shit, because they didn't have any competition for 20 years. Anyway, sorry, rant mode. I was warning people, right? Damn, where's my megaphone? Oh, I need to get up here. I'm not prepared. Rant mode engaged. Well, rant mode was engaged quite a while ago, but now it's official. This just pisses me off. And this guy's, oh yeah, it's an ethical. No, it's not. No, it's fucking not. So this is what makes me skeptical that this thing's gonna work. If people like that develop it, I think they have a good point now that they have legislation to enforce it. But I'm much more hopeful for the stuff we talked about before, the actual legislation, than this technology thing. I mean, this is also a typical Silicon Valley thing, right? This is like, okay, we fucking destroyed everybody's lives. As the chat room that I have now, because I'm recording this. I'm doing this live. Fuck it, let's do it live. Says rant. Yeah. This is also a Silicon Valley thing. It's a techie thing. It's like we fucked everybody's lives with like the stuff we did when we didn't realize what we were doing. Let's fix it. Let's fix it with technology. And they don't realize that some things. Sorry, I keep trying to get my mic. I got up and I ruined everything. And I'll get another beer here, which won't help the rants. But they don't realize that there's some stuff you can't fix with technology, like not at all. You can fuck it up with technology, but then you can't fix it with technology. But maybe I'm just negative, and maybe it's gonna work. I'll keep an eye on it. I mean, let's put it this way: it can't go worse than Do Not Track. Do Not Track did nothing at all ever to anybody. So maybe this time. Let's see. I'll keep an eye on it. Let's all be hopeful here. But let's move on. Before we go into the feedback, this is something I hope this is not going to be boring for people. I personally think this is very interesting, and I'm just going to read out some stuff now, because there was so this is I think this is a month or so ago. I kind of missed that when it originally came out, but I found this opinion, and it's a long document. It's like 50 pages or something, or even longer, and I read it, and it's very interesting. So I'm gonna there's a link in the show notes, privatecitizen.press, where you can read the whole document if you want. I think it's interesting, but then I like, as I said, I like legal things, and most people probably find it boring. So I pulled out the most interesting things. And so this is an opinion by the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania, where somebody had sued the governor of Pennsylvania for these lockdowns and these COVID-19 restrictions. So, fair warning.
We're going into a COVID topic now. Please be careful. Please wear your mask at all times. Thank you.
So some COVID stuff here. I just thought this is important. We need to talk about this because, so they sued the governor and they said, this is, what you're doing is not good. I think it's unconstitutional. And this is a court opinion where they actually said at the end, yes, we think these measures are unconstitutional. I don't think that is actually so important. I don't think the actual consequences are so important, because I'm sure it will be overturned. It's probably been overturned by now, and I don't think stopping actually the lockdowns is gonna work. But I thought this was interesting because the judge in question wrote some very intelligent things, and this is something I've struggled with in the past. When I talk to people, and when I've written stuff, and on this show, when I try to explain to you, or generally try to explain to people, why I keep bitching about this, what the problem is with these restrictions, and why, if I do, it's not even the point that I don't necessarily agree. I mean, I talked about this with Alex when we did this debate on flatten the curve. It's not so much the point that I don't agree with the actual measures. I might actually think the measures are good at that particular juncture. I thought back then. I'm moving more and more away from that, but that's not the point I'm talking about here. The point I always try to explain is, no matter if the stuff we're doing is good and is not good for people, it might be good for people. And it might very well be done out of good intentions. That's not the question. The thing I'm worried about is what it does to our systems, our democracy, our systems of government, the checks and balances we've put in place, the Constitution. And I've always had problems explaining this. And this court decision does it very, very well. So I'm without further ado, I'm just going to start reading some of this. Good intentions toward a laudable end are not alone enough to uphold governmental actions against a constitutional challenge. Indeed, and this is important, indeed, the greatest threats to our system of constitutional liberties, and this is, of course, the U.S. Constitution, but I think pretty much all they say here apply, I could say apply to in the German system as well. And I'm guessing where you are, hopefully as well. Hopefully you have a constitution or something similar. I mean, in Germany, we don't literally have a constitution. We have the Grundgesetz, which is similar. But, there are hopefully these these checks and balances in place, and hopefully this applies where you are as well. Indeed, the greatest threats to our system of constitutional liberties may arise when the ends are laudable and the intent is good, especially in a time of emergency. In an emergency, even a vigilant public may let down its guard over its constitutional liberties, only to find that liberties, once relinquished, are hard to recoup, and that restrictions, while expedient in the face of an emergency situation, may persist long after immediate danger has passed. So I thought that was this puts into words pretty much exactly how I felt at the beginning when all this stuff happened. Going on. What were initially built as temporary measures necessary to, quote, flatten the curve, end quote, and protect hospital capacity have become open-ended and ongoing restrictions aimed at a very different end, stopping the spread of infectious disease and preventing new cases from arising, which requires ongoing and open-ended efforts. Further, while the harshest measures have been suspended, in air quotes, defendants admit that they will remain in place, and so defendants in this case is the governor. Defendants admit that they remain in place and can be reinstated sua sponte as and when defendants see fit. In other words, while not currently being enforced, Pennsylvania citizens remain subject to the reimposition of the most severe provisions at any time. Further testimony and evidence presented by defendants does not establish any specified exit gate or end date to the emergency situations. Rather, the record shows that defendants view the presence of disease mitigations upon the citizens of Pennsylvania as, quote, known as a, quote, new normal, and they have no actual plan to return to a state where all restrictions are lifted. And I don't know how that is where you are, but this completely applies in Germany as well. We moved directly from this flatten the curve to basically protecting the public all the time. There is they established no rules or things where they said, okay, at this point we're going to lift it. It's going to be 3 months. It's going to be 6 months. There are no, as they called it here, exit gates. There's no end date. So as I said previously as well, this is like an open-ended emergency situation. Now they're talking actually about something that I thought very interesting as well, which I also talked about in the past, that this is sometimes called a quarantine, and that these lockdowns obviously are not quarantines because, as I said it in the past, quarantines are there to, have basically quarantine or separate people who are sick. Turns out this is actually statutorily defined in the US. So let's see what the court says here. The plain language of the statute makes clear that the lockdown effectuated by the stay-at-home orders is not a quarantine. A quarantine requires, as a threshold matter, that the person subject to the, quote, limitation of freedom of movement, end quote, be, quote, exposed to a communicable disease, end quote. Moreover, critically, the duration of a quarantine is statutorily limited to a, quote, a period of time equal to the longest usual incubation period of the disease, end quote. The lockdown plainly exceeded that period. So people who say, these lockdowns are basically, that's an argument you hear a lot, that, they're quarantines. No, they're not. They're not limited. They're not limited in time. They're not limited to you having the disease. And now, reading this, it's the same in Germany. Very early on the show, I talked about the Infektionsschutzgesetz, the IFSG. And it defines that as well. Yes, if you have a communicable disease, they can lock you away as long as you are dangerous. As long as you're in the incubation, I don't think they say incubation period, but basically they say as long as you can communicate that disease. But now they're kind of quarantining you. Of course they're also quarantining you when you have it, but like in that lockdown situation we had, they're kind of quarantining you without you know, they don't even know if you're sick. Yes, of course. Then it's not then people say it's not a quarantine. You know, it's also not. It's not the same. You're not always at home. But you know, the effect is in many situations the same. It's like the spirit of the law, letter of the law thing. I feel. Anyway, they go on. Not only are lockdowns like the one imposed by the defendant's stay-at-home orders unknown in response to any previous pandemic or epidemic. And this is about, you know, you hear about, yes, but we had face masks during the Spanish flu, right? We had, you know, they had locked down places in the Spanish. Listen to this. I mean, maybe this is the most important thing. Like geopolitically, this point's the most important. Not only are lockdowns like the one imposed by the defendant's stay-at-home orders unknown in response to any previous pandemic or epidemic, they are not as much mentioned in recent guidance by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. The fact is that the lockdowns imposed across the United States in early 2020 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic are unprecedented in the history of our Commonwealth and our country. They have never been used in response to any other disease in our history. They were not recommendations made by the CDC. They were unheard of by the people of this nation until this year. It appears as though the imposition of lockdowns in Wuhan and other areas of China, a nation unconstrained by concern for civil liberties and constitutional norms, started a domino effect where one country and state after another imposed draconian and hitherto untried measures on their citizens. Broad population-wide lockdowns are such a dramatic inversion of the concept of liberty in a free society as to be nearly presumptively unconstitutional unless the government can truly demonstrate that they burden no more liberty than is reasonably necessary to achieve an important government end. The draconian nature of the lockdown may render this a high bar indeed. Draconian, they use the word draconian, a word I've used from the beginning, which I've been got criticized for with no end. The word draconian, they're talking about China, a nation unconstrained by concern for civil liberties and constitutional laws. This, I have to point out, this is not somebody you can brand as a conspiracy theorist, right? This is not some nut job saying this, some podcaster somewhere in Germany. This is a court. This is let me just get this right. This is the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania saying this. Just let that sink in. Anyway, last piece, which basically wraps it up. This is from the end of their opinion. The liberties protected by the Constitution are not fair weather freedoms, in place when times are good, but able to be cast aside in times of trouble. This could be a speech by Captain Picard on Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm going to rewind this and say this again. The liberties protected by the Constitution are not fair weather freedoms, in place when times are good, but able to be cast aside in times of trouble. There is no question that this country has faced and will face emergencies of every sort. But the solution to a national crisis can never be permitted to supersede the commitment to individual liberty that stands as the foundation of the American experiment. The Constitution cannot accept the concept of a quote, a new normal. The Constitution cannot accept the concept of a new normal, where the basic liberties of the people can be subordinated to open-ended emergency mitigation measures. Rather, the Constitution sets certain limits that may not be crossed, even in an emergency. I mean, you cannot say that better. That is exactly how I feel. And this has nothing to do, I mean, they keep going on about the American experiment, but this has nothing to do with, the American Constitution. Anything they say there applies to any constitution in a democratic state. This is the same in Germany. I mean, we don't have we don't have the American experiment, right? But we have our Grundgesetz, which is basically our constitution, was crafted in the ruins of a nation state that had perpetrated probably the biggest atrocity committed on the human race in history. Right? The German constitution, and it's born out of not one, out of 2 world wars. Out of 2 world wars, this nation has started. Out of the Holocaust. Out of unspeakable medical experiments that were done. All of this was done for the good of the nation, for the good of the people. And so I feel like this applies to us as well. And I wish in Germany we had a justice system, and we had a court that had this backbone, and that valued civil liberties and freedom this much, and would give an opinion like this. And I just wish we had, somebody with the eloquence of that judge. I mean, the whole thing is like, if you read the whole document, is very well argued. But these were just the best points that I just thought. It's that is the stuff I was trying to say here from the beginning. It's not so much about the measures. It's about, like, you have a constitution because of the bad times, because of the emergencies. The constitution is basically a guideline you write when things are good, relatively speaking, that is set in stone, that can never be changed, no matter what happens. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Because you wanna set certain, you could even say, we were talking about morals earlier, moral laws, moral guidelines. You want certain guidelines for your state and its government and its people, that no matter what happens, no matter how important it might seem that you change them, you will not change them. They're not there to be changed. And kind of like, I guess kind of like this judge says, it's, he doesn't say that, but it comes through a little bit through the writing, the value of, or the, basically it comes down to brass tacks. You see if your government and if you're in a government institution actually value these values, and hold on to the Constitution in these situations. You don't see that in fair weather situations. And the interesting thing is, when I was talking about that, I think people often misunderstood me. I mean, I'm trying to get a lot of feedback with people. I talked to a lot of people about this, also, like, in my social circles. And people always say, well, but isn't this but this was all done for a good, with good intentions. And I can never get across that doesn't matter. That's not the point. The intentions are not the point. And it's even what is happening now, the situation, right? It might be the right response in this situation. That is not the point. The point is what happens next time, right? It's always an emergency situation. When the Nazis came to power, I pulled it up again, but, it is like the Americans always go on about the American experiment. That is when you're from Germany, that is your baseline for why we have these laws. For them, they said it was an emergency situation. They said we need to consolidate power because the country is going to shit. It's better for people. And the thing is, you can't, or the majority of the people, the majority of the voters can't distinguish in the moment. It might look good in the moment. It might look like the right thing to do. This is why you have to have some guidelines that you can't even change with the vote. Even if to the last person, everybody in the country thinks it's a good idea. Because previously, you had some really smart people and cooler heads that were thinking about this when they weren't in an emergency situation. And hopefully they made laws that will then at that point protect you. But you have to have somebody to, that was my thing. If you can have all these checks and balances in Germany with federalism, and we have, the federal government can do this and the states can do that. But if they just get together and agree, if they all agree, all these checks and balances go out the window. And, the thing obviously that galls me about this is, they make this point about China, and it's so true. China is upheld as a shining example of how to do this, of how to do the lockdowns, how to do all of it. And they are totalitarian states. We cannot, as a democracy that values its freedoms, go and say that's a good example. We can't. Not to mention that it probably is not a good example, because they could have fucking have stopped everything by closing down their borders if they hadn't tried for probably months to, hide what was going on, trying to pull the wool over our eyes. But anyway, I think that's enough rants. This show's been going on for quite a while, I see, and we still have some feedback to go through. But yeah, I just wanted to tweet that out. I thought that was so intelligent. And if you have comments on this, as always, please let me know. If you agree, if you don't agree, privatecitizen.press. And with that, let's go to the feedback. Let's go to people who have done exactly that. I had an email from Fadi Mansour, actually 2 emails, who's very, very active with giving feedback, which I really like. And Fadi says, a quick update on the COVID-19 situation in the Czech Republic, which is where he is. Probably I mentioned in a previous email that in the news they were talking about the increase in cases. The new record now is 5,335 cases in a single day, but with a total of 829 deaths since March. Of course, the headlines are always the increased number of cases, but no actual discussion of the death rate. That seems to be universal everywhere. There are also some increased restrictions till October the 18th, and masks are mandatory indoors. There's an application that is being advertised, eRuska, a phone application. I hope I say that right, eRuska. But it's not being enforced. Here's a quote from the website. But it's not being enforced. Here's a quote from the website. Is my data protected? Who is the authority behind eRuska? eRuska 1.0 underwent by several independent audits, which confirmed that its source code is secure and complies with the principles of personal data processing. I guess they mean the GDPR. The new eRuska will undergo such audits soon. The app is managed by the Ministry of Health along by the National Agency for Communication and Information Technologies. So government apps. So pretty much like, all our other apps everywhere. Be interesting to know if it uses the Google Apple API, but I'm guessing it will, because there's really no other way. On another note, I also share your opinion regarding how this, quote, crisis is being used to set a, quote, new normal. Unfortunately, regardless of how unjustified it is, but this is actually happening. My 10-year-old girls are now forced to wear masks to school, and this will be their memories of their childhood, which is actually, I don't have kids, but I thought about this many a times, that, that generation is just going to be scarred for life by this. Definitely better than growing up in Syria with the civil war, but still, I was hoping they'd grow up in, quote, normal circumstances. I don't know. I don't have kids, so I wouldn't know what to tell you, Fadi. But you don't, obviously you don't have to listen to me. But if I had kids, I would try to work against this. I don't know if they kind of hate you then as a parent. I don't know how that works, but yes, they get exposed to this. They have to go to school or to kindergarten or whatever, and their friends and everybody's all in. But, as a parent, I would just try to give them another perspective. I would try to tell them that, there is a different way of thinking about this. But what do I know about kids? I'm less a parent than I am a lawyer. Anyway, Fadi followed up with another email. Just a quick update. In my previous email, I mentioned that there's the e-Ruska app, and it is now being enforced, and it's not being enforced yet, but just now there was an interesting development. I received an SMS telling me to install the application. The sender appears as www.mzcr.cz, the Czech Ministry of Health website, but no actual phone number. That's weird. I didn't know that was possible. I was curious and searched online and found this article. Sorry, in Czech. Well, don't have to be sorry. Can't help that. In short, by request from the Ministry of Health, all mobile operators are sending a message asking people to install the application. Still not an enforcement, but pretty big move to push people to have the application. Yeah, it's a pretty big propaganda move, that. This comes as the country is going into a state of emergency. Starting from tomorrow, we will have remote learning for my girls, third graders. According to the teacher, it's supposed to be till the end of the month only. But let's see. Thanks, Hardy. Thanks for the report on that. Especially interesting since you have kids and you're talking about that. As I don't have kids, and my most of my friends don't have kids. That's interesting to me. I was throughout this whole thing, I was wondering how parents deal with that. Having kids at home and home office and home work from home, and then I don't know, homeschool them or whatever. It's definitely how does it go in this world? The old curse: may you live in interesting times. It's definitely what's going on here for us. Thanks for your feedback, as always. I appreciate it very much. Also, I have some feedback from producer Martin, and also my voice is going hoarse. I'm probably shouting too much. I don't know. It's all the rants. And producer Martin sent me some well-encrypted feedback, and he disagrees with me about the previous episode, which I... No, I'm at a loss for words. I don't like using the same word all the time, but I appreciate it as well. I just want to say that at front. I want to upfront tell you, Martin, that I appreciate your feedback and that I think it's great, and that I want people to disagree with me, because now I'm going to read it out. And obviously you disagree with me. So I obviously, it's very likely that I have a different standpoint. Well, I do have a different standpoint, and I'm going to disagree with you, but I don't want to make it sound like I'm kind of ragging on you or whatever. I'm just, you disagree with me, you sent me your stuff, and then I'm going to give my side of the thing again. So often when people write to me, producers write, we might, if we disagree, we might not come together. We might not, sometimes we will, but, we might not agree on anything. But, it's how do they say, let's just agree to disagree. Because a lot of the time, I don't think we have to agree. I think it's good that we have different viewpoints. And that's why I like people writing in. That's why I like you, Martin, writing in and telling me, because I think it's valuable, and it's valuable content for the show, which is why I'm reading it out and I'm responding to it. Anyway, I just want to say that at the beginning, so I'm not misunderstood here. So Martin says, just listening to episode 41, and I have to disagree with you about the necessity of a quote great reset. Irrespective of whether or not governments have handled things appropriately, the actions have had a tangible and financial impact that has changed the world and now has to be managed. You seemed surprised that people are taking this as a given, but I think it is. It has already happened. I think you misunderstood me on that point. Of course it has already happened. No, what I'm saying is I'm not surprised. But what dismays me is... So we had an unprecedented situation here. We had something happen that never happened before, and it's changed our world. I agree with everybody on that. What people are saying is that the thing that caused it was an unprecedented situation. What I disagree with, and what I am dismayed, is that people are arguing we had this thing happen, this virus, and they're basically making out this virus to be an act from God that was never there before, and that has changed our lives. And my viewpoint is completely different. I'm like, this is a pandemic that is not different from any other pandemic. It's not different from it's not different from Spanish flu, from anything. We had these things happen before, and what we've done as a response is not a clear cut thing where it's like, oh, there's this thing, and then obviously you do that. We decided to do that, and we could have decided not to do that. The reason I bring up the flu a lot, the influenza, which I get a lot of flack with, because it's a different disease. Of course, it's a different disease. It works different, but it's in broad strokes. If you look at humanity as like a historian would, it is comparable. It's a comparable. Yes, COVID has a higher death toll because more people get infected. Probably, but then we don't really know because we're just looking at influenza and at this virus completely different. We're testing for this virus all the time. We never did that for influenza. Our influenza numbers are not from large tests. They're from extrapolating little studies where we're like, so we have an overview of like, a percent of a percent of a percent of the population, and then we just extrapolating that to the whole population. We're like, this is probably how many people get sick with influenza. We've never looked at the virus like this. We've never done testing like this. So I don't feel like the situation that happened was so special. Our response to it is so special. And our response is what caused the thing you're talking about, which is undeniable that things have changed now and they need to be managed. But what I'm saying is, yeah, we changed things, but we might as well just go back. We could go back tomorrow. We could stop all of this. And yeah, maybe some more people would die, but everybody would go on with their lives. This is why I bring up stuff like, we have like at the one day we had 17 people die of COVID, but there's 50 people dying of medical malpractice in Germany every day. And you're like, that's just accepted. We just accept that. We just accept the number of people every day that die of cardiac arrest. We're like, yeah, it's cardiac arrest. You can't do anything about that. That's just nature. I don't know how many people die a day in Germany of cardiac arrest, but it's probably as many as die of COVID, probably more. And we just accept, oh yeah, that person was old. That was 80. Well, if you're 80 in a male, you just die of cardiac arrest. But with COVID, it's like, oh my God, we need to prevent that. It doesn't matter that the guy was 80. You don't die automatically when you're 80 of COVID, right? We accept that for one disease and not for the other. That's all in our brains. That's not the reality out there. It's completely how we deal with the situation. Anyway, I'm in rant mode again.
Danger. Rant mode still in effect. I repeat, rant mode is still in effect. Please hold on to your seats and drink a suitable beverage. Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. Anyway, Martin continues. On top of that, we're still facing a number of existential threats to the survival of our species, never mind others, in the very near future. When I look at the World Economic Forum Great Reset Plan, I find their stated goals laudable. I too believe we should be using COVID-19 as a catalyst to remodel our way of life among more sustainable lives. Now, I'm going to interject here. You obviously, talking about climate change here. But we just had this court decision where they said exactly that. So I don't want to get into a discussion here about climate change. I feel like, we can have a discussion about that. I don't want to have a discussion about that right now. The show's been going on for way too long. No matter what you think about that, this is exactly what the judge was talking about, because they were cautioning us to throw our systems, our constitution, our value of personal liberty and stuff like that overboard out of good intentions. And what you're saying is the World Economic Forum has good intentions. And I agree. I might agree with that. I don't care. It's not about the intentions. It's about what they're wanting to do. And I think what you didn't understand, or maybe you do understand, but what they mean with the Great Reset is we need to change our systems of government and our social systems. And that's what they want to use COVID for. Because let's say we all agree, let's say you and me, Martin, you and me, we agree, climate change is happening, it's man-made, we have like 10 years to stop it. I don't actually agree with that, but let's just, for the sake of the argument, say we agree. Yeah, we can agree with that, but we can't change life on the planet. We are all, I'm in Germany, you might be in the US, somebody might be somewhere else. The only way to do what they want to do, what the World Economic in the Great Reset Plan wants to do, is basically get a world government. Because let's say all of Germany agreed with you and me, and we're all like, we need to change our ways, and COVID's a good way. Let's do that. We can vote for it. Let's do that. And we do it. And we completely change the German industry, and we do all this stuff. Doesn't matter as long as China isn't doing it, as long as India isn't doing it, as long as the US isn't doing it. So the only way to do what they claim, what they want to do is, world government sounds bad, but you need to get together as the planet. And what they're talking about with the Great Reset is throwing out overboard our systems of government and our systems of of how our society works. And that's always been my issue with a lot of climate change activists as well. For example, Greta Thunberg, who often has said, we can't wait. We can't wait for people to wait on this. We need to do this now. And if we can't vote for this, we need something else. We need the government to do it without a vote. But that's not how it works. That's not how our constitution works. And basically what they're saying, if I understand this Great Reset correctly, is like, we can never get people to agree with all of this, so we need another way. And I object to that. I'm not even arguing if what they're doing is laudable, and if I want to do it, doesn't matter. The point is the way what they're implying by this whole, COVID changed everything. That's the thing I'm saying. It didn't change anything. It's a virus like any other virus, not even new virus. I'm going to get to that later. But, nothing's changed. Nothing has changed except our response to it. And I personally feel it's overdone. It's panicky, but they want to use that to change even more things. To trample on our constitution even more, to do even more things that the voter hasn't decided at the poll, and that's the thing I object to. So we have some, as people might know, I'm doing this live, and since it's the feedback segment, so I have Green Turtle 69 in the chat who says, "What about living by example?" I don't object to living by example, but that's not what these people do, right? If Greta Thunberg was look, I'm living by example and we can do this, I'd be okay with that. My problem is she's going to the EU, she's talking in front of the UN and the EU and governments and is telling them, she literally says, you must do this in the next 5 years. Right? But you're talking to the head of government. The head of government is an employee of the people of the country. The head of the government is supposed to do what the people of the country wants, but that's not what she wants. She wants the people in charge to change things because she knows she can't get the voters to do it. And it's not attack Greta Thunberg. There's many other people who know these things, who've said these things. They know this. Right? If the voters would be doing this, if you could get the voters to change by living by example, then you wouldn't have all these problems. But if you work for VW and you've worked for VW your whole life and that's where your money comes from, and that's how your and that's how your family is putting food on the table. And some child from Sweden or whoever, some German green politician gets up in the parliament and says, we need to get rid of all petrol cars next year. And you see your job, that's your whole life, just float away in front of your eyes. You're not voting for that. That's the problem, and that is the problem they want to get around. They want to get around the voters. The voters are inconvenient because they don't agree. Some of them they're farmers. They have other problems. They have other problems. They have other priorities, and that's the problem they want to get around. Anyway, let's continue with what Martin says here. In my view, this is not even a choice, but it's a necessity if you want our civilization to survive. I would actually say you completely bought into the Kool-Aid there. If that were so, we might agree. But I haven't seen anybody. So the problem is, we're getting in the climate change debate now anyway, even if I didn't want it. But this is a parallel. It's the same thing that's happening with COVID, right? I've been working this whole week. I've been working on masks. Like I'm actually looking at the published medical research literature to see how masks help. Do they help? In what respect they help? And this is the same thing as these climate change arguments. You are saying it's not even a choice, but a necessity. And these people, that say that generally say, well, it's like, 98% of scientists agree, blah, blah. But, I'm an intelligent person, I think. They're much more intelligent people than me. But, I make my living by reading things and analyzing things. And I think I can think critically reasonably well. And I'm not, I'm not good in math. But I'm relatively, I'm pretty good in sciences. I can do natural science. I can read a research paper from pretty much any field and kind of grok it, and often even see problems with it, even if I'm not like completely in the field, or see if it makes sense. And I haven't seen anything approaching scientific proof that what you're saying is right. I haven't a single person, and I've been discussing climate change. I've been reading a lot, and like for years now, and I haven't had a single person who could, or a single paper who could clearly and in a way that I can understand explain to me how carbon monoxide in the atmosphere is causing the greenhouse effect. When I research that, I find two different things. I find things written for the layman, which are like, okay, it's kind of like this and it's kind of like that, and then kind of that happens. And then I find actual scientific literature, which I don't understand, which is like computer models, and it's like here and it's like there, but it's all so like very, very specific that there's no like. I've never had anybody explain to me why all of that means that in 50 years we can't live on our planet anymore, right? I understand that carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases are rising. I understand the data for that. I'd be with you even that it's probably caused by humanity, but that already. I haven't seen anything, any proof that would convince me of that as a scientific argument. This is like masks. It's kind of like I'm pretty sure the masks help. Like we have lots of data that kind of suggests that, and I think it's a safe bet, but it doesn't prove it. Like correlation is not causation. To say, okay, we know that CO2 is rising. in this time. And if we look at humanity at the same time, this is when the Industrial Revolution was, and this, this and that, it's like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Yeah, that makes sense, but it's not a proof. The one thing doesn't prove the other thing. And then also you would have to explain to me the actual chemical processes that are happening, and how this is all this is causing. I'm with you that this is with when we're talking about climate change, I'm with you that this is probably prudent if we do something about this, but we have to do it on a basis where we're going, okay, we can't say, okay, the science is settled. Everybody knows, 98% of scientists agree. No, the science is not settled. This is the scientific consensus that we operate on. Right? But at the moment where you go with anything, you go with any field, you go, this is settled. We've decided this. You're not a scientist anymore. That's not how science works. Actually, I think I'm gonna stop this at some point here. I'm gonna do an episode, kind of like the socialism primer. I know this is not privacy related, but I think we need to talk about this, where I try to explain how I think the scientific method works. Because for thousands of years, it's been accepted scientific fact that the Earth is flat. I say fact, but that was the consensus. And along comes a guy, everybody thinks he's crazy, and he just has a theory, and then he kind of has good data for the theory, and then everybody goes, after he's dead, of course, everybody goes, well, okay, I think he was right. But you can't just now see, we all operate under the understanding that the Earth is round, right? But like as a scientist, you can never go, well, that's completely settled now. Somebody might come along and say it's actually more ovoid or whatever. You can never do that. That's not how science works. And the problem is, if you go, we have to overthrow the way we organize government. And this is kind of the assumption here, to organize government and everything. Then you have to prove, without a doubt, that the assumption you're operating under is correct. Because if it's not, you're fucking everything up. And then it turns out in 50 years that maybe it wasn't that bad. There's lots of examples, especially from this climate change field. How often they thought that, there was peak oil, that we'd run out of natural gas. And there was good data for it, at the time. But then you figure out, oh no, there's actually much more gas. There's more oil. We still have oil. It turns out we haven't run out of oil yet. That's the problem. You always need to adjust. You get more data, and then you need to adjust. Which is why when you're deciding what to do, you also need to adjust that. And the same thing, to bring it back to the topic actually, the same thing I feel is the same with COVID. We have too little data. We don't even know how fucking masks works. It's not proven. We don't know. We guess it's, it looks like it, but it's not proven. We don't even really know how big the particles are. The water droplets that fly through the air or don't fly through the air, how this virus is spread. Because it turns out that's fucking hard. And we've tried to figure that out with influenza for 60 years and haven't gotten really far. So, it's not black and white. So I just object to saying it was not even a choice, but as a necessity for our civilization to survive. Like this, if you studied history, if you looked at history, this is how it goes wrong. This like assumptions like this is how it all goes wrong. Okay, anyway, Martin goes on. The fact that COVID-19 is the catalyst is pretty irrelevant when it comes to inequality, sustainability, etc. No, actually, it's not, because like if you're talking about inequality, that's the problems we've had as a human race since day one, and just saying, see, this is the problem. If you just say, well, now COVID is a good, we're having this situation and people are thinking different, so this is a good moment to change it, right? And this is how we can change everything, and we can change thinking and change human nature. That's not how it's going to work. That's how some people think it's going to work, but you're just denying human nature. Inequality is a fact of human nature. There's been inequality as long as, 100 people have been together anywhere. It's just look at history. You can look back 4,000 years. There's always been minorities. They've always been treated badly. They've always been killed. There's always been wars over inequality. We can't just get rid of that because we're now thinking differently because of the virus. Just imagine what happened in human history. That's like saying, oh, now that the Roman Empire has fallen and we had like the Dark Ages, we can change everything and now human nature is better. No, it turns out it's just the same. 2,000 years later, it's just the same. It's the same problem all over again. Anyway, as the clip you played explained, it's just about taking the opportunity for positive societal change while we have the chance. No, it's not. That's the problem. That's whenever people try to do something like this in human history, it's gone wrong. That is why we have a constitution that prevents this shit. Because everybody thinks at the moment they're doing it, it is for the greater good. And then 50 years later, when the dust has settled, the people that survived the whole shit storm that happened afterwards, they're like, we have a different opinion now. Incidentally, the weforum.org agenda website includes dozens of pro-right to privacy articles. Yeah, you're misunderstanding me. I'm not saying they don't mean well. I'm saying what they're doing is dangerous. The World Economic Forum does not appear to be the main problem when it comes to privacy, but rather the actions of individual governments and corporations. Well, also, this is not a privacy problem. This is a problem of these fuckers wanting, I called it the Great Privacy Reset, but, you need to look at it a little bit further. As I said, I keep talking about a lot of this COVID stuff and civil liberties and constitution and all this, because that's my approach to this show. This is like, the realism, the realpolitik approach to this podcast, because I realize that you can talk about privacy. It's like an IT security podcast. They can talk about IT security until they're blue in the face, and we can talk about privacy as long as we're blue in the face. At the moment where our constitution is overthrown and our civil liberties are curtailed, and we suddenly have like a fascist government, or a totalitarian government. Doesn't have to be fascist, can be a socialist totalitarian government. All's out the window. We have completely different problems, right? So the concept of privacy we have here when we talk about web technologies and about privacy laws is all just because we have a constitution. When that goes away, all bets are off. Incidentally, read that pro-privacy articles. The World Economic Forum does not appear to be a main problem when it comes to privacy, but rather the actions of individual governments and corporations. I will say the involvement of people like Charles Windsor and Christine Lagarde does make me uneasy. So, yeah, me too. I also think it's worth... See, this is also like these people, right? All of that I said was operating under the... understanding that they have the best interest in heart. I actually don't think they have our best interest in heart, because Prince Charles doesn't have my best interest in heart. What the fuck? Christine Lagarde? Come on. As Joe Biden would say, come on, man. I also think it's worth remembering that the COVID-19 pandemic is not playing out like a scientific experiment. There's no control group and nothing to compare ourselves to. It was a novel coronavirus of which we knew very little. Actually, no, it's SARS-CoV-2. And, SARS been around quite a while. And we, why Drosten, Christian Drosten in Germany is the guy they go to. He developed, his lab developed the PCR they're using for the test now, right? And they didn't develop that for SARS-CoV-2. They developed that for SARS and MERS. It's not new. Novel coronavirus means we hadn't seen it before, but coronaviruses are new, and it's the same as SARS. Well, not the same. It spreads differently a little bit, But SARS was actually more deadly, SARS-1. But it just didn't. It wasn't just as infectious, so it doesn't kill as many people. So no, it's not new. Therefore, I think conflicting advice, overreactions, mistakes, change of plan, and unscrupulous people trying to take advantage of the situation are entirely to be expected. We just have to make the best of it. Or we could just rail against it and say this is all bullshit and stop doing this shit because the situation is actually not as bad. And what you're doing is worse than the situation. All that said, I'm very pessimistic about our chances, and it's much more likely we will end our days as serfs in a slowly dying dystopian nightmare than free and happy in a recovering world with a sustainable circular economy. See, I feel like you're coming around to my point at the end, because you kind of realize that that's exactly what happens. There's people, well-intentioned people, that will overthrow everything. Yeah, it's not going to happen. I'm just painting. The whole thing, what I talked about in the Great Privacy Reset, I don't think that's going to happen. But I was trying to point out what could happen. It's kind of a worst-case scenario, and in that worst-case scenario, yes, it's good-intentioned people, but they throw everything overboard, and then human nature takes over. And we will never have, in the episode where I talked about socialism, it's such a powerful idea because it's an alluring idea. It's utopia, right? Communism, if it would work, is a utopia. The problem is we will never get there because human nature takes over. And you can see in the whole Soviet experiment, we call it the American experiment, the Soviet experiment, you can see it started with Lenin. At the moment where Lenin took over, human nature takes over. And then it got worse with Stalin. But, it's just human nature. People want power. People are corruptible. People treat themselves and theirs better than other people. And this is why we have inequality. And in this imperfect world where all this is shit and human nature is human nature, I feel we have a good system right now. Well, we have corrupt politicians, but generally speaking, people in the US and we in Germany, we've had peace since we had this constitution. Okay, we went to war in Afghanistan, which I object to, but generally, we're prosperous. We're a prosperous nation. We've had peace, and I feel people do not value that enough. They don't value the Constitution. They don't value our system. Yes, it's shit, and politicians are shit, and there's corruption. It's true, but it could be so much worse. And they're like, it's just capitalism's fault. We need to overthrow this. And we need to overthrow the way we have elections. And we need to overthrow, No, it's not going to get better. It's quite good as the way. I'm not saying we should keep everything. And I'm not saying we shouldn't listen to people who tell us about climate change and tell us about these viruses. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have had a reaction to it. But we have to balance that out. Right? And I don't want a great reset. I don't want to reset anything. Yes, I know I'm privileged. I live in a society that's doing very well. Other people in other societies are not doing that well. But my approach is let's try to lift them. Might be an old-fashioned approach, but let's try to lift them up. Let's try to get other people have a system like the system we have, like a system we have in the US. Like our listeners from Canada have in Canada. Let's try to get more people to have a system like that and not overthrow everything. Yes, it's not perfect, and it's hard for us if we say, we want to change our economy, we want to change the way we produce energy and all this stuff. It's hard and it's slow, and people will fight it, but that is the only way. There are no shortcuts. At least no shortcuts that don't lead to disaster. But I think I've preached enough. That's enough for today. Thank you. Thanks to all of you. Thanks, Martin. I do value your feedback. And, please feel free. Write in again. Anybody else, go to privatecitizen.press. There's a contact link in the feedback section at the bottom. Please contact me. And with that, I've been here way too long. It's getting really late. I need to wrap this up. So, just one more thing I have to say, and that's it. That is, you make the show possible. You are listening to this. You're not only a listener, you're a producer. You can help out by writing in, giving me feedback, giving me content, send me links to stories you want to cover, sending me clips, whatever you want to do. But you can also help me by just chipping in, as the, Vox calls it, helping monetarily. You can become a patron on Patreon, where there's different levels. You don't have to be George's Walther and pitch in at the highest level. You can pay $1 a month, which really, to be honest, is nothing. It is pretty much nothing, but it helps me. I mean, if some people do that, it helps me. It helps me get some money. I can pay taxes and support the German state, and then maybe I have something left over to eat, and maybe buy some magic cards once in a while. So if you want to do that, go to Patreon. I use Patreon because I know that people criticize it. It's just the easiest way for me. There are other, if you want to support the show in other ways, please contact me. You can use PayPal, producers@fab.industries, and that is also in the show notes. You can do that. And all of this is the value for value model. It's pioneered by Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak, which basically means I hope you get value listening to this. And if you do, think about how much value that is, and maybe think about if you want to give some of that value back to me, so I can continue to do this. It's like a perpetuum mobile, if it works. You're pitching in, you're giving me some value back, I give you value back, and you give me value. Maybe it's like a circle jerk. I don't know. Anyway, I appreciate it. And with that, let's wrap this up. And I have to mention all the people that helped. First of all, Raoul Kabzali, who wrote the theme music for this show, that I like very much and that I've licensed. It's a song called Acoustic Roots. Raoul Kabzali, thank you. I would like to thank Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk. Bytemark.co.uk is a UK hosting company. They graciously give me the service I use to host my audio files. So they're basically my CDN, and I don't have to pay for it, which is the only reason why I can do the show. Well, that and the value I get back from all of you. So thanks to Bytemark, and then thanks to all the people who've provided me with monetary value. Those people are Georges Walther, Niall Donegan, Michael Mullen Jensen, Jonathan M. Heathy, Dave, Butterbeans, Mark Holland, Steve Hose, Shelby Kruver, Vlad, Kai Sears, Jackie Plage, 1I11G, Philipp Klostermann, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Fadi Mansour, IKN, Matt Jellyman, Joe Poser, Dirk Didi, Dave Potter, David Potter, Mika, Dave Amrish, Martin, Vitautas Sadauskas, Ricky M, Drive Zero, SJ, Jonathan Edwards, Barry Williams, Silvio, Mr. Amish, and Richard Gilson. Thanks to all of you. I appreciate you very much. Thanks for being part of this. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for listening to my rants. Please contact me if you have anything to say. As always, I love doing this. This is my job. I love my job. I would not want to do anything else. And this is why I'll see you again next week. I don't know. I might do an episode about the cyberbunker trial here in Germany. Has some interesting privacy implications. Those people who ran a bulletproof hoster. I'll be at the opening of the suit of the court proceedings on Monday. So I might report from there when I get back home, whatever. I'm probably not from the courtroom. I don't think that's allowed. But that'll be interesting. Or maybe I'll do a show on something else. I don't know. Anyway, see you soon. Please aim to misbehave. And this was The Private Citizen, defending your right to have something to hide. See you next time. Goodbye. That was that. That's a podcast recorded. Let's stop the recording and save the file. And now the interesting thing. Now comes the point where I listen to it and see if it's a usable podcast. And if it's not, I cry bitterly and have to do it again. Like last week. No, let's not do that. I don't want to do that. So let's see. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for listening to my rants.
That does sound like a podcast.
Please contact me if you have anything to say. And
Hey,
always, I love doing
Turtle,
this.
thanks.
This is my job. I love
Thanks
my
for
job.
commenting.
I would not want to do anything
looking
else. And this is why I'll see you again next. So what I will do now is I will take a little break. I need to just catch my breath and see. I think the wife's probably gone to bed while I've done this. This took long. So the rants. And I'll just put a pause screen up for a little bit. And then I'll edit this and put it out. And I think I'll stream that as well. Might be interesting to people. And so if you wanna see that, hang in there. I'll be back in about 10 minutes, and then we'll edit this podcast. So see you in a bit. And which button do I want to press? I think it's this one.
Right, here we are, back. Man, my voice. I've been ranting too much today. Okay, if you watched this last week, you know, you've seen this before. But maybe this is still interesting to people. So let's see what I do. So you've seen me record the show. And we end up with this. And then we need to make a podcast out of it. So let's do that. Let's show you how that works. So I do these things live to tape, which is pretty much I try to play all the audio and everything in one go and have a podcast. So you just go and snip it off at the beginning. Pretty much here and there. And you, oh God, I need to. Just look at this mess. Just look at this mess. It's a holy mess. Unholy. It's an unholy mess. Right, where are we? So we just get rid of this shit. And then we get rid of that shit. Pretty much till here somewhere. Split. And so, okay. Here you can see I'm using noise reduction on this and a compressor. This is all built into Hindenburg and it actually works very well. You can actually put VST plugins in there, and I've played with that a little bit, but not really used it in production. So far it's doing this. So let's just listen to what it sounds like. You're listening to the private citizen defending your right to have something to hide, your privacy podcast. This is episode 42 for Wednesday, the 11th of October, 2020. Episode 42, The Answer. No, okay, that's the beginning. Is that actually as loud as that? I'm still, since I'm using the software, I'm not using my mixer to duck the intro music. I'm still a bit worried that I'm not doing it right. Matt Jellyman, Joe Poser, Jack Didi, Dave Potter. Okay, this is just hasn't filled in yet. Come on, Hindi. Kai Sears, Jackie Plage, 1I11G, Philipp Klostermann, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Fadi Mansour, IKN, Matt Jellyman, Joe Poser, Jack Didi, Dave Potter, Mike, David Potter, Mika, Dave Amrish, Martin, Vitautas Sadauskas, Ricky M, Drive Zero, SJ, Jonathan Edwards, Barry Williams, Silvio, Mr. Amish, brightmark.co.uk is the UK hosting company. Thanks for listening to my rants. Please just compare that here for a second. Alexander Scherschel, but let's just go with Fab. I like giving people the want to do anything else. And this is why I'll see you again next week. I don't know. I might do an episode about the Cyberbunker trial here in Germany. Sounds like has some interest even in privacy implications. See you next time. Goodbye. Okay. Let's go there. And let's snip the end off. Defending your right to have something to hide. See you next time. Goodbye.
I'm really happy I found that song. So I always leave a bit of pause at the end. It's just better if you listen to a podcast and it's over and it doesn't like the next one starts in the place. It's always good if there's a little pause. I've been doing that for years. Just a second or so. Right, so that's everything. So that would be the podcast. But I remember I had, I couldn't, when I was hitting the marker, it didn't work. Was that the second marker? I think there's a pause there. It's pretty much the only error I need to fix. I mean, there's some more pauses in this, but I like the natural. Keep it natural. I don't want to edit it. It's just the way the people can hear what I'm talking about and how I think. I just like it that way. Perfectly. Because with the new law. Okay, maybe not. Was it the first one? Oh shit, I moved the thing and so it moved the markers. I don't know why it doesn't move them. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I'm still learning this program. Anyway, we have to listen. We have to move all the markers again now, so might as well do that. What are we doing here? Where are you? You fucking. Where is it? There it is. For some reason I can't do a mark, and I do appreciate it quite a lot. Hello. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Luckily, I'm an old hand at doing this shit where I just seamlessly go in again with the nothing happened. So you can't detect an edit quite a lot. And with that, I think we should talk about the show. This is the act and how important that is for the US, because I mean, it's really very important to me, and I do appreciate it quite a lot. And with that, I think we should get right. Sounds good. Okay, now we just need to move the other markers. It's probably there. That's another car. Oh, I still have the window. I opened the window a little bit because it was getting hot in here. Oh, did you hear that? That's the metal plate. That's what it sounds like when my window is open. New law, there's potentially so there's new technology. So that's when I'm hitting the marker button. Gotta love mechanical keyboards. Excellent. At this point. So, I might as well fix that when I'm at it. Might as well edit that out. Oh, I know. Make it easier on the listener. So you don't need to worry what the hell's going on there. What is here? Why is he pushing any buttons? At this point. So, with producers would be excellent at this point. So, with that, I think that's good. Let's see if the soundboard sounds good. Fucked something up. No, it's 999 now. That's not how it works. Oh yeah, here. This should be the right clip. 9999999. Exactly. 9999999. So section is it? 9999999. 0.315. I love a good Hitler joke. I guess that was the first Hitler. That was time to first Hitler. I hope this is not going to be boring for people. Buddy. So maybe this time. Let's see. I'll keep an eye on it. Let's all be hopeful here. I love that I'm saying I hope it's not going to be boring. I mean, that's not good advertising. See, this is why I would never be in advertising. I'm just too upfront with shit like that. Let's all be hopeful here. But let's move on. Before we go into the feedback. Sorry, I didn't see your question there, Green Turtle. What are you using for editing? Actually, this is it's called Hindenburg Journalist Pro. It's a podcasting app. I use it for recording and editing. Previously to this, I used Ultraschall, which is a open source mod to Reaper. And before that, I used pretty much Audacity. I used Adore for a while, but the old fallback was always Audacity. Let's all be hopeful here. But I used that pretty much like I used Ultraschall and the metal plate again. Is another car coming? Oh, and some music. I'm close the window now. Don't break everything. Sorry. To disconnect that. Otherwise I can't reach far enough. I mean, I use this because it's like okay, so the thing I'm doing here is I'm trying to streamline everything, right? I'm trying to minimize time. I'm as a freelancer, I need to minimize my time when I'm doing shit like this, and I'm trying to do it so that the most work is researching the show and then recording the show, and everything else, editing it, publishing it, just takes as little time as possible. And that's why I'm now using a system like this, which is pretty much has everything built in. You just record into it, and then all of this is like a workflow you do, and then you can just publish. Let's all be hopeful here. You'll see in a minute. But let's move on. Okay, no, that was the previous to last marker, I think. What is happening now? Even in an emergency. Oh, that's the pregnant pause. I actually left that for. I mean, you cannot. It's long. You cannot say that. I thought that would. Usually I would edit something like this out, but I did that on purpose. Situation in the Czech Republic, which is where who's private citizen .press. Private citizen .press. And with that, let's go to I already recognized the waveform of me pushing those buttons. Like back in the day when I cut out all the ums from Linux Outlaws, I could tell from the waveform like my ums and Dan's ums. Press. And with that, let's go to the feedback. Let's go to people who have done exactly that. I had an email from Fadi Mansour, actually 2 emails, who's very, very active with giving feedback, which I really like. And Fadi says, not that I could ever use them in my day job, but now this is my day job, so fuck all of you. Anyway, I'm gonna have some, as we call it in Germany, Schleichwerbung. Yes, silent stealth advertising. Probably as you would call it native advertising. It's not really native advertising. I love this beer. If you have in Germany, if you like Alt, light is not helping. And can I somehow? Anyway, it's called Diebels. It's lovely. It's very malty, and it's just people. Some people don't like Alt. I don't understand these people. This is like a stout, pretty much. If in the UK this would be a stout. It's very it's very foamy. and dark, almost red. Unfortunately, recovering. I do appreciate a good Germany. Oh, recovering from alcoholism. Well, yeah, I mean, understandably, maybe I should stop talking about the beer then. That's okay. We got all our markers, I think. Yeah, so this is it. So that's all the editing I do. This is all the editing I do. Don't we have a soundboard this time? Except that one clip I played off the internet. Okay. So that's your show. And then you just go, forgotten where you do it. Publish. Oh, no. No. You don't. Forgot one thing. So we have all our markers, but now we have to go chapters and we have to name them. So this is this puts the chapter markers into the podcasting apps that that work with chapter markers. Like for a long time I was using Pocket Casts. I'm actually now using on the iPhone Overcast, which is nice. They do that. I don't really use chapter markers myself. I just listen to podcasts from the beginning to the end. It's just the way I am. Well, I pause them a lot, but people told me they like it, and this was always hard to do. But if you have an app like Ultraschall or like Hindenburg, it just does it. It's just part of the exporting process, so I might as well do it. I mean, you can see this is like a minute work, or maybe with putting the markers in, maybe 5. But, if people like that, if it's added value, then why not do it? So okay, now we did that, and now we can go publish. Oh, sorry. Did I actually? Yeah, I know it's popped out. I don't like that. It looked better. Who cares? The album art looks weird. You can do it like this, actually. It's actually quite good. Now you can read everything. You can put URLs in as well. I never do that. Now you can go publish. No, that's cool. Oh, you're one of you. I like that. You're cool about that. And not everybody is, but people tend to get preachy with things like this. I have all the. As you can see, like it's pre-filled with like this is the MP3 tags with the tags, and now I have just to put the ones in for the episode. Number 42. That's all good. And last time it still said that, so you kind of have to close it. I learned, and now it has the episode specific tags, and these are pre-filled. This is just our podcast stuff, podcast information. So I guess this is all good. This is all good. So we can click this and then go publish. What? Why do you think it's episode 41? Sorry, what? Why do you think that? It says episode 42 here. Wait. Maybe saving it will help. Contains episode 41. Why do you think this is the same episode? I don't understand that. Maybe I'll have to close it. If you try turning it off and on again. Let's do that. Defending your right to have something to hide, your privacy podcast. This is episode 42. That's good. Okay, let's do this again. Why is it saying that? I was going to go with no. I mean, this is kind of the publishing thing is like it creates an RSS feed, and then you can upload that to your server. But I use Hugo, and it creates. The website creates an RSS feed. So, how do you publish out on YouTube? So what I do is, so I'm streaming this over Twitch, and Twitch records the stream, and it keeps it for 14 days, I think. But you can export from Twitch right to YouTube, and I just do that, and then I have it on YouTube. Which I guess people like. Oh, one thing we need to do is we need to have album art for this teaser. Oh God! So what are we gonna? Something with California, probably, right? So So this is the moment where I'm like streaming my URL history to the world. So I'm hoping to God that I did all my dirty stuff in private windows. I like Unsplash. Unsplash is great. These are stuff you can wait. Oh, this is just in Squarespace ad. Okay. For 1 second there, I thought they were bought by Squarespace. That would have worried me. Unsplash is just like this. You can use this without credits. I usually on the website I give them credits, but I use this just as a splash image for Twitter and stuff. It's just not even on the website. Yeah, Hollywood's quite nice. I want something where people immediately recognize that it's California. I mean, okay, you can use the Golden Gate Bridge, but that's very specifically San Francisco. What's this all landscape? California sign. More shops. I think this is good. Yeah, so I'm gonna download that. Yep. And then and I'm currently using Photoshop for that. I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm actually gonna stop paying for Photoshop. I pay for the subscription mostly for Lightroom, but I think I'm gonna switch to Darktable or something. Get pissed off with Adobe. But I actually have to replace this